Dear students, having discussed what an EPCG scheme is and what are the other schemes available for an exporter in order to import capital goods meant for further exports to further destinations, we now progress to what is the step or what is the procedure to avail such benefits under the EPCG scheme. As you might recall, it is a very beneficial scheme and the exporters need to understand and be fully aware of whether they qualify for that scheme or not. So let us move ahead and see what are the various steps involved in availing this and applying for the EPCG scheme. Dear students, DGFT or Directorate General of Foreign Trade under the Ministry of Commerce, Government of India provides a web portal for application of exporters under the EPCG scheme. So, in order to apply for this scheme, the exporter needs to know the capital goods specification, the note for the project, and its link to exports. All these three conditions need to be met in order to apply for the EPCG scheme in the DGFT portal. Without these specifications of the particular capital goods, the project note which needs to be detailed and its link or association to exports, DGFT reserves the right to reject this application. This is why we propose every exporter should know what is the feature of their good, how it is related to exports. Because EPCG has a distinctive mechanism associated with it of export obligation without making a case for their link to exports, the application made by an exporter on DGFT portal might be rejected. So this is the foremost and most fundamental step that needs to be adhered by the exporter. Next step is the exporter must get EPCG authorization, which requires registration at the customs, execution of bond or BG if needed. Once the application is received and approved by the DGFT, the import process shall begin. Once the capital good is imported, it needs to be installed immediately or within the time frame specified by the DGFT. The installation requires obtaining the installation certificate as well, because it would need to be furnished to the DGFT in the future before the closing of case, and then only the export obligation discharge certificate will be provided by the DGFT. Then export and track export obligation. So the exporter, once they have installed the capital good imported and have acquired the installation certificate, it is then important for the exporter to see what is the export obligation required, and they have to monitor it as well, that in the time frame of 6 years they have to export a multiple which is 6%, a common benchmark of the duty saved on the import of that machinery. After they have monitored the export obligation, it is now important for the exporter to submit redemption documents to DGFT for final release of export obligation discharge certificate. So, this is how an EPCG scheme application, receiving, approval and closure takes place. The important thing to note, dear students, is the export obligation should be monitored well by the exporter for the final closure of the discharge certificate. Let us see what are the key documents required in EPCG scheme. The first key document is EPCG authorization and amendments. Whether or not the EPCG has authorized the import of such capital goods availing duty reduction or duty concession. This is a very important fundamental document. The second document is bill of entry or domestic invoice for capital goods. If the capital good is indigenously procured, then the domestic invoice need to be given for the exporter. The third key document is installation of certificate from jurisdictional authority. So once the import of capital goods has begun, the machinery or equipment has reached the step of the exporter, the installation should be immediately done and the installation certificate should be issued and must be preserved by the exporter for further submission to the DGFT. And this installation certificate is provided by the jurisdictional authority. The next key document is shipping bills or digital bank realization certificate for goods or FIRC or BRC for services separately. The final key document is export obligation ledger or tracker, statements on the association of the imported machinery with the export motive and usage of this installed machinery or equipment. Now let us see how does domestic procurement or indigenous procurement under EPCG occurs. So as noted before, the exporter might choose to import a particular capital good from a foreign buyer, or they can also decide to source it from a domestic manufacturer or merchant. So the rules would be slightly different in both of these scenarios. So here we will see how does domestic procurement happen under EPCG. An exporter may buy capital goods from an Indian manufacturer against EPCG authorization. So here we learn that EPCG is not only meant for procurement from foreign buyers only, it can also be availed in the condition of domestic procurement. EPCG would still apply, which means that duties would be at a concessional or reduced rate. The supplier, which is a domestic supplier, may claim deemed export benefits as per policy. Export obligation and other conditions remain with the EPCG holder. Export obligation is calculated with reference to national customs duty, taxes or cess saved. So the only difference in the calculation of export obligation under the EPCG while referring to a foreign buyer and a domestic buyer is the change of duty rates. In the case of a foreign buyer, the tariffs would be at a concessional rate according to the specified tariff duty. And in the case of domestic procurement, the duty saved would be with reference to the national customs duties, any other local taxes, or cess if applicable. How can an exporter be safe? Only by knowing what are the various things that they have to comply with. What are these things? They have to maintain site-wise capital goods register and usage log. How is an exporter using the particular machinery imported under the EPCG scheme? That ledger has to be maintained in case of submission to the DGFT. Clubbing of authorizations possible under rules. EO period or block extensions available with fees or conditions. So, an exporter might approach the DGFT to extend the period of export obligation from 6 years to like maybe 10 years. But is it possible or not? It only depends on the specific conditions on the approval by the DGFT. It might happen that the DGFT approves it, but a penalty of fees have to be paid. Or there might be other conditions that the DGFT wants the particular exporter to meet. No sale or transfer of capital goods during export obligation period without permission. This step needs to be well known and well adhered to by every exporter. The import of any capital good which is meant for export, that capital good or machinery cannot be transferred or cannot be sold to any other manufacturer or exporter within the time frame of the export obligation. It can be done under several instances but not without the approval of the concerned authority. So these 4 steps need to be reminded to the exporters in order to stay safe under the EPCG scheme. What happens in case an exporter fails to meet the export obligation requirement? It might happen that the exporter is not able to meet the export obligation amount. They were required to meet, as from our previous example, if they were required to export 1.2 around goods worth 1.2 crore in the next 6 years, within next 6 years, and if they stop exports at around 1 crore and fail by only a margin of 0.2 crores, then also they will have to pay the save duty plus interest plus some penalties that are applicable and are designed by the DGFT. Delays in installation or exports raise risk. If you have already imported a capital good or machinery for their use in exports of the goods, and there are delays in installation of that particular machinery, it might call the attention of the authorities. It might subject you to risk and defaults in the future of getting an EPCG authorization. It might block you from future authorization processes. It might tarnish your image as an exporter in the international sphere. So all these risks are tied to delaying installation of the machinery or the capital good. The other risk is delay in exports. This also raises risk in terms of receiving future authorizations for EPCG schemes or any other related schemes. It might block your chances in the international sphere. It might tarnish your image. It might reduce your global image. So every exporter should be well aware of these key points, particularly related to export obligation requirements. Keep backups. If the exporter is not well aware of a particular destination country, you might want to venture out for other alternative destinations. You must diversify into various markets. You should have a ready list of alternative markets or products that count toward export obligation. Now let us see what are the other benefits tied to EPCG. EPCG focuses on capital goods relief, input side incentives like drawback, ROTTEP, ROS-CTL, GST refunds are separate. Exporter must watch current policy circulars to avoid double benefit issues. Many a times it might happen that an exporter have received benefits under the EPCG scheme, but it collides with other schemes as well, or the benefits might be country specific. So the exporter must be well aware whether there is any overlap in the benefits or schemes they are claiming and availing. Now let us look at project import scheme. As we have mentioned before, this project import scheme is meant for huge projects, multi-sectoral projects involving a number of products, involving a number of industries as well. For example, power, fertilizer, refinery, metro. So in these projects, the approval of various projects happens and the import of capital goods under these projects would be at a very concessional rate or zero rate. You have to register the project at customs. All capital goods and components for the project fall under one heading. It is very useful for complex multi-shipment plant imports. So you might require, for a huge project like metro, the exporter, the manufacturer would require an assortment of capital imports. It might fall into several subheadings or several subcomponents. So these kind of scheme is very important for complex projects like metro and huge scale projects like power, electricity, fertilizer, refinery. Let us also deal with the special economic zones, export oriented units, software technology park, EHTP routes as well. Units in the SEZ, EOU, STP, EHTP get duty-free import or procurement of capital goods and inputs. Exports are net foreign exchange positive over the bloc. Movement and DTA sales have specific rules. Plan location early. Let us also get a quick look on the IGCR 2017, which is import of goods at concessional rate of duty. What is the feature of IGCR 2017? Concessional basic customs duty for goods imported for a specified end use. It is not meant for all types of products. Intimation to customs, bond and periodic consumption reports. The exporter can apply to tools, fixtures, spares in some notifications. What happens to second-hand capital goods? Does the policy or scheme cover second-hand capital goods? Yes, it does cover it. Imports generally allowed with conditions, but some items are restricted. For EPCG scheme, the importer must check current policy on second-hand capital goods eligibility. So not all second-hand capital goods are eligible. It depends from good to good. The key point here to always know the residual life, valuation and compliance certificates. IGST and input tax credit. IGST paid on capital goods may be available as ITC subject to usage and place of supply rules. Under EPCG, zero basic customs duty, IGST may still apply unless exempted. Factor IGST refunds or credits in the importer's costing. Here is a quick checklist for an exporter before applying to the EPCG scheme or any other schemes to avail concessional duty imports of capital goods. First of all, you have to confirm capital goods specification. The most important thing is confirming and rechecking HS code meant for that particular product and the site of installation of the imported machinery. The second key point is you should know the nexus between the import of that particular machinery and exports or their usage in the manufacturing of exported goods. How the capital good drives exports or services. This is really an important block in order to avail the export promotion capital goods scheme or any other project import scheme. What is your plan about export obligation? What will be the product? What will be the particular markets or countries? Value of the exports in the coming 6 years. You should also know whether the bank is ready to approve you for guarantee. Internal export obligation tracker template. You must also supply a tracker template for tracking or monitoring export obligation in the next 6 years. The EPCG should be discussed with your particular bank for bank guarantee or letter of credit limits. Use packing credit or post shipment finance to fund export obligation. ECGC covers help de-risk new buyers while chasing export obligation. Dear students, we now know in detail what are the various schemes that are available to the Indian exporters in order to import capital goods, and driven by various purposes they can choose from various alternatives. We also know by now what is the steps involved in availing and applying for these particular schemes. What are the quick checks that an exporter must be well aware of? What are the things that are really crucial and the exporter must not miss out on those crucial steps? For example, one crucial step is regular monitoring and tracking of export obligation within the next 6 years. Also, the key fundamental to understand and remember is that the exporter must know the correct specifications of the capital goods they want to import. Let us now conclude this discussion with a remark on how an exporter can go ahead and decide which scheme would be good according to their products and which schemes they can qualify for. So an exporter can use EPCG scheme when duty on capital good is a barrier and exports are planned. In case of a large turnkey project such as metro, power, shipping, refinery, the exporter can consider project import scheme. Units in the special economic zones or export oriented units make sense if most output is for export and location suits. What is key in all these policies is compliance. Every exporter, irrespective of what scheme is eligible for them, what scheme they decide to apply for, they must stay compliant, and compliance in terms of installation of the imported machinery or capital goods on time without any delay, steady exports according to the time frame of 6 years, and the documents should be ready and according to the prescribed format and order. So dear students, we have now covered all the schemes that an exporter can make use of in order to import capital goods at a concessional duty rate or zero duty rate. What it helps with is it promotes and encourages exports and helps in the larger picture and building blocks for the economy as a whole. Thank you.